The targeting of a nation's energy infrastructure during a time of war is a legitimate military target, even though it has dual use capabilities, and even if the primary use of the energy grid in Ukraine is for civilian use. The fact of the matter is, energy makes a nation work, it makes a military work, and it needs to be attacked if you're seeking to degrade a nation's ability to continue conflict. It's an approach taken by every nation in times of war. The United States led a international coalition in 1991 against Iraq, Operation Desert Storm. We initiated that conflict with a strategic air campaign that went on for 6 weeks. The very first target hit was the Iraqi energy grid. So it's hypocritical in the extreme to call what Russia is doing a war crime. It's not a war crime. It cannot be prosecuted under any court of jurisdiction. A prosecutor simply cannot articulate a cognizable course of action against Russia. It's absurd to say otherwise, and I think it reflects the fact that Russia's hit a nerve. This is something Russia should have done on day one. This war would be over by now had they done so. And if Russia is seeking to bring an end to this conflict on terms that are acceptable to Russia, this is the only course of action Russia can take.
Der Druck auf das ukrainische Oberkommando ist Berichten zufolge sehr hoch. Wer hat Ihrer Meinung nach das Sagen? The pressure on the Ukrainian military high command is reportedly very high. Who is calling the shots, in your opinion?
Ukraine's command structure is complex. Ostensibly, the commander-in-chief is the Ukrainian president, but his ability to stand alone is it's impossible. He cannot stand without the support of NATO, the United States, the European Union, and the collective West, as Vladimir Putin would call it. Also, his relationship with the military is complicated as well. The military, when they look at a campaign, they aren't looking at the politics. They're looking at how it relates to the accomplishment of military objectives. Meaning that if you're going to carry out an offensive operation, is it more important to destroy enemy combat capabilities or take territory? From the Zelensky perspective, at a time when there seemed to be some fatigue in the collective West about continuing this massive support of Ukraine, to what end? Was Ukraine ever going to be able to do something with this weaponry, etc.? And knowing that he was going to have to ask for many billions of dollars more in assistance, not just military assistance, but economic assistance to pay salaries to keep Ukraine functioning. Ukraine does not have a functioning economy at this point. He would have to demonstrate that Ukraine can win on the battlefield. And so I think what we see is a blend of pressures being placed on Ukraine when it comes to how the military operates on the battlefield. And these pressures resulted in an impressive political statement made by the Ukrainian military. We cannot underemphasize the impressiveness of the Ukrainian operation in Kharkov. They took a lot of territory, and they took it very fast. But when you remove the map from the equation, and if someone said, hey, Ukraine just finished a 2-week operation, they lost 10 to 20,000 guys, and they killed 200 Russians, would you call that a Ukrainian victory? The answer is no. Or if I said Ukraine committed the totality of its strategic reserve into a battle that failed to destroy the Russians, and now Ukraine has no more strategic reserve at a time when the Russians are building up their military capacity. Would this be a Ukrainian victory? However, what we can say is that because of the Ukrainian offensive, NATO and the United States have committed billions more to the Ukrainian effort. More weaponry is coming, more troops are going to be trained, and there's talk about providing Ukraine with billions of dollars of much needed economic assistance to keep the country afloat. So it's a mixed bag. On the one hand, without this offensive, would Ukraine have received this level of support? I think the answer is yes, but it would be difficult to sustain this down the road. So Ukraine is securing its future by sacrificing its troops at the battlefield. But from a military perspective, this is extremely, extremely risky because while one cannot predict the future, the Russians still have to convince people that they are capable of competence on the battlefield. The Russian performance has not been stellar. It hasn't been as bad as some people are making it out to be, but there have been many mistakes from the strategic level on down. And I think people would have a right to say, well, are the Russians really going to be able to finish the job, or are they just building these troops up for more lethargy? But if Russia is as good as some analysts think, I personally think they are this good, then Ukraine's in a lot of trouble because they've weakened themselves. They've basically burned through their reserves, and they don't have a guarantee that more reserves are going to come in a timely fashion. So I think in this one, the different pressures being put on Zelensky is actually bad. And the fact that Zelensky felt that he needed to sacrifice his strategic reserve to appease a West that 8 months into the war is no longer viewed as a guaranteed source of support shows some fundamental weaknesses in the Ukrainian way of doing business.
Die deutsche Außenministerin Annalena Baerbock forderte die Lieferung von Leopard-2-Panzern an die Ukraine und behauptet sogar, dass Waffenlieferungen Leben retten würden. Was halten Sie von solchen Erklärungen führender Politiker und welche Auswirkungen könnten die Leopard-2-Panzer auf dem Schlachtfeld haben? German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock called for the delivery of Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine and even claims that arms deliveries would save lives. How do you see such explanations from leading politicians, and what kind of impact could the Leopard 2 tanks have on the battlefield?
I have to be careful what I say because I don't want to insult anybody. The Leopard is a good tank. There's no doubt about that. It's not the best tank in the world. So the idea that you could take a tank and put it on a battlefield and suddenly expect a different outcome than that which is already taking place, that's something that can only exist in the minds of amateurs, people who know nothing of war. And frankly speaking, the Green Party of Germany, they know nothing of war. And the German foreign minister knows nothing of war. They should. They've been watching war taking place for 8 months now in Europe. It's a war where I think it's clear that technology alone doesn't carry the day. Technology will only get you so far. Now, if these Greens and your foreign minister can explain how you're going to take a very technically advanced piece of equipment like the Leopard tank, and I think they're also asking for the Marder infantry fighting vehicle as well, basically to take German technology and transfer it to Ukraine. Question for the Green Party: how often does the Leopard 2 tank break down under the normal course of operations? What's the maintenance schedule for a Leopard 2 tank? Because before you send it to Ukraine, you might want to be able to answer that question. How many spare parts do you need? And where should they be located? Forward with the unit so they can maintain it right there on the battlefield? Or do you have to take it to an interim depot, maybe set up in Ukraine where the Russians can hit it while it's being retained? Or will you have to take it back to Poland or to Germany to be repaired? These are questions you might want to ask before you start talking about giving the Ukrainians this equipment. Can Ukrainians operate it? What kind of ammunition does it use? Is the ammunition compatible with the other tanks that the Ukrainians are using? Or are you trying to introduce a whole nother level of complexity for logistical support of the Ukrainian military that's already heads are spinning because so many different weapon systems are being provided with so many different maintenance and logistic sustainability issues and training ability? If you give them a piece of equipment that breaks down, is difficult to sustain logistically, and is more complicated to operate than, say, the T-72 tank, saving lives, you're slaughtering Ukrainian soldiers. You're idiots. You're the kind of people that should be dismissed from government forever. It is brain dead to think that by giving the Ukrainian military this equipment in a time of war where they don't have the time and space necessary to absorb it in its totality, not just driving a tank, but having all the sustainability issues around it and the level of proficiency to use it in combat. This isn't about driving around a training ground. This is about using a tank against an enemy that's an expert in tank warfare. The Russians will annihilate the Leopard tank. The Leopard tank will become nothing more than burnt out, rusted hulks of German steel. I think we've seen that picture before. So before Germany starts talking about sending German tanks into Russia to fight Russians, we learn the history books. Go back and read it. It didn't work last time. It's not going to work this time. What the hell are they thinking? I don't mean to get angry at you. I'm not mad at you. But my God, has Germany learned nothing from its history? Mind your own damn business and quit supporting Stepan Bandera worshiping neo-Nazis in Ukraine, because that's what you're doing. Focus on fixing your problems at home. Ask yourself as you go through this difficult winter, was it cheap Ukrainian gas that made the German economy work? Or was it cheap Russian gas that makes the German economy work? Is it expensive American liquid natural gas that makes the German economy work? Or was it cheap Russian gas that makes the German economy work? And then ask yourself again, why have you foregone everything that made you succeed as a nation these last couple decades and thrown it away for what? So the Green Party can say they provided the Ukrainians with Leopard tanks when all you're doing is giving German weaponry to Nazis? No, this is stupidity of the highest order.